There is so much information out there. People like me are constantly releasing YouTube videos, and it must just be so overwhelming and confusing at times. So how do we actually organize all of this into a really good, solid, and effective practice routine? Well, that is what I want to talk to you about today. I'm going to help you get all of the massive information and condense it into the parts that really matter in a way that you can be spending your time really well consistently. So today's video is the ultimate guide to practice routines. I'm also going to show you 2 practice routines that I actually designed for my own students. I'm going to show you a longer routine and a shorter routine. I'm going to talk to you about how and why they're structured the way they are. So be sure to stick around and look at both of those examples, because those are really helpful, and you're literally going to potentially be able to model your own routine off of those examples. But first, if you're new to my channel, please click subscribe and click the little bell to turn on notifications so you don't miss any more videos just like this one. And also, if you already know and like my content, please hit the like button. Really helps me out and helps the videos perform so much better. I really appreciate it. All right, let's get into it. Also, really quick, if you are interested in taking your plan to the next level over the next several months or even in 2024, I've got some of the best deals that I've had running ever currently right now for Black Friday. Link is in the description. Be sure to check that link out if you are interested. So whenever I have a new student coming to work with me, there are a few questions that I always ask. And the reason I'm telling you this is because these are the same questions that you can actually ask yourself. So number 1, how much time do you actually have to spend per day on practicing on average? That's a really important question because that's going to determine how we set up your practice routine. So in this case, I highly recommend that you're very realistic with yourself. I wouldn't recommend saying 4 hours because you're just gonna shoot really hard for fitting in that extra 2 hours per day. No, if you normally get in about between 1 and 2 hours of practice, I would not recommend setting your practice routine goal for anything more than 2 hours unless you really know yourself and think that you can do that. So pick a realistic goal. Every day, chipping away, you're gonna make so much progress. Even if you can only do a short amount of time, remember, with focus for just 30 minutes plus per day, you can still make a lot of progress. I've seen it done by many students before. So once you determine how long you're actually going to be able to practice today, then I would recommend you start looking at your goals. And we can do this in a pretty classic way. Number 1, what are some of your larger, long-term overarching goals? You could literally ask the question, where do I see myself in 5 years? Or where do I see myself in 3 years? Write that down, but don't get overwhelmed here, because realistically, 3 years also not that long of a time when it comes to really making some huge changes in your life when it comes to music or your career or really anything. Second of all, I just want to remind you, you would be amazed at how much you can get done in a short amount of time when you are focused and you really know what you're doing. That is exactly why you're watching this video today. I'm going to help you get to the bottom of making sure you have a really focused routine. Now, before you actually start writing anything down for practice, we have to get much more granular. So we've asked the big questions. What are your big overarching goals? Let's say that you just started learning piano and your goal is, in 1 year, I want to be able to sit down and perform a fully improvised piece of music in front of my family. I think that that is a very realistic goal for a beginner to have, for the record, because I've seen that achieved many times in actually significantly less than a year when someone was really focused. Now, on the other hand, if you said your goal was, I'm just starting today and my goal is to be one of the greatest pianists on the earth in 1 year, I would say, well, you know what? It's possible. You should work towards it. But it's really important that we then break any of these goals down into bite-sized goals. So next up, we're gonna break this down into, let's say, goals for each month. I want you to get really detailed here, because what does a really successful business tend to do? Well, a really successful business, in fact, even really successful music artists, many people that I personally know, I've seen their schedules, and their schedules in terms of the music they're releasing is sometimes planned out a full year or more in advance. So they know exactly what goalposts they're trying to hit. I know this is scary, but having a plan from day 1 can make all the difference. So sitting down and doing this is so great. In fact, I would urge you to have a piece of paper and a pen, or a computer, of course, by you right now as you're watching this, and start actually writing down these goals as we work through this in this video today. So once you've written down 1 goal per month, I want you to then get even more granular. What do you actually need to do to achieve those goals month by month? What are the little tasks? Maybe some of them would only take 2 days. What are the little micro goals that you need to achieve in order to actually meet those goals on a monthly basis? And this is a level of organization we are getting down to right from day one. You can always change this. You can always change your routine, change your goals. That's fine. But we're going to stay organized because in today's world, there's just way too much information, way too many things to work on. We need to know what we're doing and have a plan. So one other tip, as you're actually thinking through this, make sure that you're thinking about the order in which you are working on goals, right? You might actually look at your month-to-month goals and realize, I might need to restructure this a bit. I might need to switch months 3 and 4 around, because really to achieve what you want to do in month 3, you actually need to do month 4 first. So you can rearrange those and just make sure that you have a really nice order of your routine and a nice focused plan going forward. Okay, now step 3, this is something you can actually do on a day-to-day basis. You don't need to do this right now. But what I recommend doing is each night before bed, you're finally going to choose the goals for the next day. What I want you to do is be very realistic with yourself about how long you have to practice the next day. Don't overshoot, try to be nice to yourself. And if you have more time, that's always great, you can keep going. But set a realistic and reasonable goal for yourself. Then I want you to write down anywhere from just 1 to 3 goals for the next day that you're going to achieve at the piano or musically in general. Things that you can just check off your list, right? Some of these things might actually take you 3 days, that's fine. But I really want you to try to get down so bite-sized that for your next day, you have this really nice achievable list of tasks that you're going to accomplish that's going to further your musical development. All right, I think we're ready to actually take a look at some practice routine examples now. So I'm actually going to show you some routines that I have structured for people based on this approach of really taking a look at what they are going to be working on each month. In fact, this is actually something that I do as part of my mentorship process. So both routines that you're going to be looking at right now are from different mentees that came into the program. I work with mentees very, very deeply hand in hand. I design their practice routines myself, and I have so much fun doing it because I find it really, really fulfilling to actually look at a specific student's goals and find the best possible way to meet those as efficiently as possible. If you're interested in learning more about that process and actually having me help you to set up your routine in this way, make sure you check out some more information about the mentorship program. The link is in the description. You can set up a completely free call with one of the members of our team. They will help you learn more about the program, see if you'd be a good fit for it, and potentially even set you up with a call with me as well. So make sure you click the link in the description and check that out if you're interested. And also, if you learned something so far, please hit the like button. Really, really helps me out. All right, let's get right back into this practice routines video. All right, so since a lot of you, I think, are probably going to have less time rather than more time, like an hour, maybe to an hour and a half tops, I'm gonna take a look at the shorter routine with you first. Again, this is actually something I created for a mentee in the mentorship program. So you're actually getting a real glimpse into something I would design for one of my own students. That said, you can actually take this routine and design something for yourself and, try it out, see how it works. So let me explain how and why we made it work this way. So you'll notice that on this short routine, I have 3 green blocks. Those are going to be kind of the daily must achieve goals, okay? So our 1 hour of practice. You'll notice each block is 20 minutes long. So we're keeping it simple, 3 blocks, each 20 minutes. Anything purple here is bonus material. So these are the kinds of things also that are easier to do away from the piano. And so I make them purple. I would love for the student to get to them if possible on a daily level, especially since they may not need to be at the piano for them. For example, ear training and active listening. But the main 3 blocks are going to be the green ones here. So number 1 is going to be voicings and harmony. So the reason I often have this be first is because if you don't have time to warm up, practicing voicings can be a nice way to just ease into getting on the piano. You're not doing anything fast usually, and you're just working on some simple voicing and harmonic movement. So oftentimes what I like to do with a short routine is stop and think, what exercise can give the student the most benefit in the shortest amount of time? Now, some people would disagree with me here, but I'm a big believer in working on small blocks. And what I mean by that is instead of constantly trying to learn new repertoire, for instance, I'm a believer in taking just a 4 to 8 chord progression and learning the chords in that progression. Because as I'm sure many of you already know, if you have, for example, a 1, 6, 2, 5, That progression is something you will encounter extremely often in jazz standard songs. Not only that, but it has a 2-5-1 built into it, right? Again, possibly the most common progression in all music, but certainly, if not the most common, one of the most common progressions in jazz. And popular music too, I would say. So what I've done for this student is I've actually taken one very specific progression. So we've got the 1-6-2-5-3-6-2-5-1. Okay, so that sounded like a mouthful, but it's actually really simple. 1-6-2-5, and then 3-6-2-5-1. So in this single progression here, we've actually got two of the most common progressions that exist, right? We've got 1-6-2-5, which has also got the 2-5-1. Then we've also got 3-6-2-5, also a very, very common progression. Now, when I said I want to get as much efficiency out of this practice as possible, well, for this student, what I did was I indicated that for the 6, we're going to make that an altered chord. So in this case, a dominant chord with a sharp 9 and a sharp 5. So that means that in this progression, we're getting a little extra practice of a different sound as opposed to just being a normal dominant sound. Now, we're going to actually spend a good amount of time on this progression, right? Because this progression is going to be our canvas for learning all sorts of voicings and techniques. So I'm actually going to have that student first learn this progression in key number 1, which let's say is C, but then I'm going to have that student learn it intervallically as well. So we're going to go up a step and do D flat major. Then we're going to go up another step, half step in this case. Now, one thing I'll throw in there is once the student can do this fairly easily with the first set of voicings, as opposed to saying, okay, now we're going to do a completely new set of voicings, or now we're going to do a completely new progression. No, I want the student to keep focusing on this progression and going deeper and deeper, learning more techniques over this one single progression. Repertoire is great, but we can actually focus on that a little differently, and I think it's much easier to learn repertoire a little bit later in a student's development. So what I might actually do is say, let's just get a little bit more granular in terms of the voicing. So we might actually change a couple of the voicings in this routine and say, okay, can you easily now go through the different keys and change these voicings? Now, I would also have the student practice this progression in steps. So the bass note moves up in whole steps. So first we do C, but then we do D, and then E. And then after E, which I clearly have to practice still, we would go up to F sharp major and then A flat and so on. We're moving in whole steps. You could also do it in minor thirds as well. And so what we're doing is we're just constantly introducing small challenges into the routine that the student is already used to, the progression the students are already used to. Block number 2, we're actually going to, again, try to effectively maximize the amount of efficiency of this routine. We're going to actually still use this progression, but now while we're doing it, we're also going to do melodic improvisation over it. So I love to have students practice the continuous scale. I'm not going to go into all the details of that because that would take a lot of time, but basically we're going to practice continuous lines over a progression until we're really comfortable using the different scales we need. And we'll also do this intervallically as well. And we can do that in minor thirds, whole steps as well. Now, obviously, there's more detail when it comes to this, but I only have so much time in this video. This is about designing the routine, not taking you through this entire routine, step by step, because realistically, this was designed for a specific student, not you specifically. And hopefully you can use this to design your routine, not necessarily copy exactly what I'm showing you here today. So block 3 is to take 20 good minutes of the routine and really try to put this into context now. So we've been doing this isolated progression, but we are going to try to find some songs that use this progression, and we will do some repertoire taking what we've been working on, okay? Now again, I'm a huge proponent of sticking to the same tunes that you already know decently well, or when you're learning a new tune, make sure to stick to it for a while. The second you know the chord changes, don't move on to the next unless your specific goal is just, I want to learn as many tunes as I want as possible for some reason. Otherwise, I would say if your goal is actually to improve your technique and your skill as an improviser, I actually recommend just taking a little extra time and really making sure that you've fully mastered and feel true comfort over a song before moving on to another one and trying to learn more chord changes and memorize more chord changes, because that's an easy way to get bogged down or overwhelmed. You'll notice that as we do this, we're really trying to actually play a tune now. So we're actually going to do some more technical application of solo piano techniques in the case of this practice routine. So step 3 is to actually apply what we worked on in steps 1 to 2 in a more real world improvisational setting. This is in some ways the most fun step, but it can also be the most challenging in other ways. So I am totally cool with this student here working on 1 or 2 tunes. I would have this student focus for a while, again, on these songs, because I don't want the student spending the majority of their brain power memorizing chord changes. I want them to spend the majority of their brain power actually applying techniques and improvisation, things that we've talked about already in this routine or in the lessons. So in this case, a big part of step 3 is actually going to be to work on solo piano techniques and left hand techniques especially. So I might actually say we're going to start off by working on that over the progression. So that might mean, for example, doing some rhythmic movement with open structures here like 1, 3, 7 and 1, 7, 3. Things like that. Might also mean adding in some left-hand voicings that are rootless as well. And we're really just keeping this all very simple. So you see how steps 1 through 3 are actually working on a nice variety of skills, but the routine itself is actually very simple, just 3 simple short blocks, and each one of them is really contributing all around to the other. In a way, we're almost just working on one thing here, which is this simple progression that you will find in many, many songs. Now, the purple things are things that I think any student should be able to find some time to do. Doing a quick morning ear training session on the go with an app on your phone is a great thing to do. My personal favorite right now is Good Ear Pro. The interface is a bit outdated, but it's my favorite, just easy to use jazz ear training app. But there are a lot of great ear training apps out there. Active listening is also another thing that's so easy to do on the go. Do it on your way somewhere, have your headphones in. And what I would say for active listening is just choose a few recordings and really get to know the solos on those, to the point where you might even be able to sing them. All right, so that's our short practice routine. What does a longer one look like? In a longer routine, we basically just have more space to expand the routine. So we can just get a little bit more detailed, more granular, and we can have more practice blocks. So for this student, the student really had a lofty goal of practicing 4 hours a day, but it was very realistic for this person to do that. And in fact, they did do it most days. So again, based on your time, you need to choose your routine in a way that works for you. Because this person had more time, I was able to really set up the routine for them in such a way that we could take this granular approach and I could put more emphasis on things like ear training and say, this is a focused thing. Now, I want to just say, when it comes to longer routines, it is really important to acknowledge that your focus may change throughout the day. So you may actually need to write down a routine and then see how it goes for a couple days and make adjustments. I want you to keep in mind, if you feel overwhelmed by the amount of things in this routine, then you need to take a different approach. I would actually recommend that you do condense this into more overarching blocks with less separate assignments. You can still do that and spread it out over more time if you want to spend more time. So part of this is getting to know yourself as well. That's why when I actually work with a student, I'm constantly helping them make adjustments to their routine so that that routine can be the best possible routine for that specific person. So I actually just numbered this 1 through 8, and you'll notice that at the bottom, this all adds up to 240 minutes of practice, which is 4 hours of practice in a day. So we start with a 15-minute morning ear training session. And then our warm-up / linear improv section is really a 60-minute routine, but I was able to break it down each into 20-minute blocks. You can take a quick break after each of those blocks just to recharge, give your brain some time to recover and absorb some of what you did in each of those 20-minute blocks. Again, this is great because this person has the time to do this. Then we move on to left-hand chords and comping. So in this case, we were actually able to, let's say, get really, really specific and work on purely the skill of left-hand rhythms and comping, because that was a really important weakness of this student and something that they really wanted to improve upon. After that, we add some more harmony and voicing vocabulary. So this is really getting now into two-hand voicings, both solo piano and spread solo piano voicings. Next, this student actually is a great example of someone who really wanted to expand their repertoire as quickly as possible. So we actually put a focused 20-minute session every single day purely for repertoire memorization. Now you'll notice most of these things are actually going to be in 20-minute blocks or more, other than really the ear training or listening section. I personally have always found that 20 minutes works great. It's a great amount of time to focus on something, but then take a quick recharge after and move on to a new concept. However, I do want to just point out that every single student is different. And so you might actually be someone who just does so well focusing on one thing for 40 minutes, right? And so you just want to do 40-minute blocks. At the end of the day, there is some subjectivity, of course, to practice routines. And so you need to also learn what is most motivating for you and what makes you feel the most organized. So again, I'm not going to walk you through this entire routine and exactly what this student is working on, but we also have sections for active listening, improvisation, and then another ear training / active listening session before bed, which again, this is just repetition that we're really factoring into this 4-hour-a-day routine. Even when you're not at the piano, I will just say something I've said on my channel many times: mental practice, listening, that all counts towards your 10,000 hours, of true mastery of the piano or music in general. So these are just 2 examples of how I've structured routines for students, and one of these might work really, really great for you. But I will just remind you, again, every student is different, so you need to also learn to trust yourself. And again, if you actually want me to help you structure your routine and put this together, click the link in the description, set up a free call with one of our awesome team members. They will learn about you, your goals, and have a chat with you about what the best course of action would be, and they might actually set you up on a call with me as well after that. So be sure to click the link in the description to get that set up. All right, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you're new, make sure to click subscribe. If you got something out of this video, please hit the like button. It really, really helps myself and the channel in general. It helps me get amazing podcast guests the more large the channel grows. So I'm really excited to just keep growing and being able to provide more content for you and more value for you. It's something that I genuinely get so much fulfillment out of. Hit that like button, really helps me out. And of course, I will see you in the next video.